Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, wheat is flying off the shelf here at Merschman Seeds. We have good supply available. Hear about how the wheat planting date affects high yields. Turk and Ben went up to Ogden, Iowa to check out test plots. We talk about what they saw. And hear about late season tar spot.
Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we got Turk, Lynn, and myself, and we're going to let Lynn lead the discussion. It's been a busy week.
Yeah, so we're in a fun period of time from our perspective. We're getting some harvest yield information coming out, and we're also getting some demand for wheat to kind of push forward a little bit. And I know we've talked a lot about it the last couple weeks, but I think it's really important as we go through this process of harvest that if you have any inclination on having some wheat acres, we're having a lot of success in wheat sales, and just want to put that on guys' radar because wheat can tend to be kind of in two camps. Either you're very proactive and you're all settled, or you're going to wait till harvest and see where we're going. I think with the harvest window for most of us being probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ahead of schedule, it's going to be a good opportunity to have some wheat maybe into your rotation on that marginal acre. We discussed it before. You know, our yields on our wheat are making that marginal acre look very, very attractive compared to looking at corn or even a double crop when we look at wheat and beans both. So just want to put that out there that we're having a really good wheat year. Stuff is definitely flying off the shelf. So if that wheat interests you, we have a good supply left of Maddie, Julie, and Barbie starting to get a little bit tighter here, but we have a good supply. We're sitting really, really good. And year to date, from a sales perspective, I'm very happy with all of our dealers and our salesmen that nobody's planted wheat, and we're trending ahead of schedule compared to what it was last year. And last year was our highest wheat yield wheat sales year ever. So.
Correct. So we're kind of also approaching that time frame where guys are asking, how early can I plant wheat? And I kind of wanted to set the reminder out that, with the southern rate of imidacloprid, which is our insecticide that we use on our wheat seed treatment, we can actually go to a week or two before the fly-free date. So if our fly-free date is
September 28th. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So far, around or October 1st, if we can go 2 weeks before that. So, we're right at prime time. This is the middle of April. Conditions are right. We have a little bit of moisture in the ground. It's the middle of April when it comes to like a corn crop. When you're comparing the two different grass species. This is the ideal time to get it stuck in the ground, get your early beans off, and there's a little bit of that going on as we move to the south. And even up here just a little bit for seed production wise. Now's the time to start getting stuff stuck in because, October 1st is going to be here before we know it. And that's, kind of like the May 1st time frame. And things have a tendency to trail off from a yield perspective once we get too much past the second week of October.
Yeah, that's where we've talked about it before. Wheat has some properties from a yield component that's similar to corn and some that's kind of similar to soybeans as far as, when we look at tillering plants. But on the corn perspective, planting days available for growing degrees and having an early start is definitely conducive to having a high yielding wheat crop. So like you said, we're in that house money time frame right now. We have some, for the most part, I think almost our whole sales territory has either had rain or there is some precip that's coming. So for those folks, we can get it germinated, we can get it off to a good start. We're far enough along in the calendar that I'm not concerned with getting too much growth coming into to winter and having some frost issues, I guess. From that though, where do we want the wheat ideally to be at from a stage perspective going into winter?
So from a staging perspective, it will never get too physiologically mature, but it can get too tall. When it gets too tall, it has a tendency to attract insects, and that's why the insecticide is so important. So you don't want lush wheat that's 1.5 feet tall when you're going into winter. You really want wheat in that 4 to 6 inch range where you have plenty of carbohydrates and sugars built up in the root system, so it's going to overwinter well. That you're setting up the maximum number of tillers when you have at least 4 to 6 inches worth of growth in the fall, and that you're going to have a lot of primary and secondary tillers doing that. But you and I have both been a part on our own acres where you don't see a sprout, you don't see a sprig of wheat, and you end up still making decent wheat yields. Yep. So it's all about how that wheat plant compensates, like what you were saying.
Exactly. With the genetics that we have, both corn, beans, wheat, we're getting to the point where, June planted corn isn't as big of a concern from a yield standpoint. November, almost December planted wheat is something that obviously we know we are giving some off the top end, but still very, very respectable yields that come off that, and very profitable yields as well.
Right. So, like right now, you're correct. We're playing with house money, and it's time to get the wheat stuck in the ground if you have the beans off it. I've seen some pictures of customers on Facebook that have already been sticking some wheat in the ground. So,
yeah, from a logistics standpoint, we are we're setting very good from production. Everything is in the shed, ready to be shipped out, and the trucks are itching to get moving. So we're very excited about that aspect. I think that's something that we get excited about from the office standpoint. When this thing turns into Grand Central Station during the wheat planting season, we really have a ability to get stuff turned around in a 24, 48 hour time frame, and really it's probably sub 24. But the boys in logistics and our truck drivers do an awesome job in season to get everything out to the countryside and get it put in place, so that way guys can have as smooth of a planting season as possible.
Yep, completely agree. So you talk about being here in the office and logistics and everybody getting excited, especially on like production. The first set of Lincolns rolled in on Friday morning for seed production. So that's our first load in for the year. About 3 days later than our earliest ever from what some of the guys in the warehouse that have been here for 30 years have said. So pretty exciting that bean harvest and production is getting ready to roll as well. So we're in the groove.
Yeah, and we've got all of our inspectors out hot and heavy from Indiana to northern Iowa. I mean, things seem like they're maturing very quick and very. I think the nice part for us right now, just looking at our own acres and kind of driving around. You guys took a trip. I think we're maturing very even too, which is nice. So we don't have potentially won't have too many issues with green spots and fields and playing that from a seed perspective as far as trying to match our seed size. The early numbers on some of the bin samples that we've got from some Cheyennes, seed size looks very good. The yield was very good given the circumstances that we had. So I think in some spots, corn has maybe left a little bit to be desired, but right now I think beans are at expectation or traveling just a little bit ahead. So
yeah, 50s, low 60s.
Yeah, in areas that had sub 15 inches of moisture.
I would say sub 10 inches of moisture.
Where were the beans running this morning, Ben?
I have no idea on yield. I just saw that there's a wagon roll.
I just meant moisture-wise.
Oh, I'm sure if they're coming in, they're sub 13.5. So that's part of our standards where we start and stop. So other things that I kind of wanted to hit or touch on is we've had a few corn plots come in. Turk and I spent some time traveling the Des Moines area and looking at new potential corn products that are coming in. So once we get a few more test plots in, we'll definitely start pumping them out and tagging them in the Cup of Joe. But things look very, very promising. You going to talk about kind of what we saw up in the two different plots we looked at?
We went up there. We were in Ogden. Looking at the plots there. That was planted earlier than the one in Story City. It was planted, I think, May 7th, so there was a big difference in the two plots as far as what we were looking at. But things looked surprisingly well. They were dry early and then got some good rains the first part of August, which really helped them. But things look surprisingly well.
Yep, lots of new genetics that are coming in the Power Core that are as exciting, if not more exciting, than what we currently have in the lineup. So if our lineup right now is keeping up or excelling, things are only going to get better from that perspective. So I'm very, very excited to see what our corn lineup is going to continue to evolve. And I think we have some opportunity for some better products that may work in dry land. Moving west for sure, we have some products that we're probably going to get just a little bit earlier in the lineup from that perspective. So getting into that 106, 105 day range so we can travel north a little bit further. Those are things that I'm kind of working on in the background, trying to figure out where we're at and where we need to go.
And then the bean plot we went to, interesting, they got, 1,200 new enlist varieties that they're looking at.
Yep. And a third of those are Peking lines. So you can see the direction and the push from our breeding program.
Yep.
That, we're really focusing on the Pekings, and all of the good Pekings are definitely going to be rising to the top.
Yep. That was a good plot to look at. They had some bad wind up there, and some of the varieties were showing that we're down a little bit. But again, that's why we go look at them.
Yep. Take notes on standability and disease, and a little bit of architecture notes, and things look really well. You're right. I mean, they had 2 inches of rain, and you could still see 1.5 inch cracks in the ground. So
yeah, it was muddy with cracks in the ground.
You don't see that very often. No. What else you got, Turk?
Feds decided to leave interest rates alone this week, which was a good thing. So the only 2 negatives that we got in our inputs for this next year are interest rates and fuel. Everything else is trending down and looking good, and a lot of there'll be people thinking about anhydrous coming up here very shortly. So again, too wet, too warm yet to be even thinking about that. But first day of fall coming up here tomorrow. So I think we're getting ready for the funnest time of the year.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. We're going to know a lot. I mean, within the next 2 weeks. We're sitting in, like Lynn has said multiple times, we're sitting in a garden spot here. Guys are pleasantly surprised that have been in the dry areas on how things have turned out. But it's definitely been interesting.
And there's some rain in the forecast.
Yep. And with that, I guess just locally for our local viewers, it's one that you and I talked about a little bit. We had a late, even on the fungicide applied acres, we had a late emergence of tar spot. So for you guys that are in the southeast Iowa, west central Illinois, northeast Missouri, I would definitely be going out and looking at your field. I don't think it came in late enough that it's affecting anything from a yield perspective. I mean, very, very minute, but what I'm concerned with a little bit is that our 110 to 115 day corn all has dried down at virtually the same pace. Now we need to watch to make sure that there was no cannibalization that happened during that. We start having some stock integrity and stuff to go down. Right now, all the moisture is really good. We're able to get in there and get some stuff done. But as we push further and further down the calendar here, I want to make sure that we go out there and do the push test and make sure we're keeping an eye on standability, because I think that could be an issue, especially with the way the yields are. You got these big old heavy monsters hanging out there on that corn stalk, and we're just kind of asking for trouble as we continue to push through. And that's multiple brands been walking through. It's not specific really to anything. I think that the 25-30 day efficacy of our, not efficacy, but the residual on our fungicides, they did exactly what we wanted them to do. And the minute that they got through that critical period, it started to show back up again. So
cannibalization of stalks is definitely apparent for the fields that had tar spot early on. The corn is definitely cannibalized. It's definitely very weak. A toddler could walk through the field and knock stalks over. So the same issues that Joe has talked about previously that were over in Champaign County, or that we all know that we're in northeast Iowa. To pick your year and pick a hot spot. I've seen that on our own personal acres, because the tar spot came in under irrigation. If you're not ahead of it, you're always behind
Correct.
it. So
Correct.
When these are things that I'm making notes on for next year. If we're running corn on irrigation, and you have tar spot out in that field, and you can tell. I mean, right now you go out to the leaf, you scratch on the leaf. If that pustule is not coming off, you need to be making notes. And that inoculum is now in the field.
Yep.
So it blows from the neighbors. Majority of it comes from the fields. If we get the right timing with moisture, you need to be making plans. And right now, my plan is make sure we have a pre-tassel fungicide application, no matter what.
And look at coming back at around that R4, R5 standpoint. We did some personally as well on double fungicide, just to not necessarily from a from a tar spot, but looking at maybe packing on a little bit more weight to the kernel. And I wouldn't say it's to the line, but you can go out and look and definitely see that there was some efficacy on tar spot. Like I said, I think it come in just late enough that it didn't affect yield. There's nothing there that I saw that from a plant perspective that had me too concerned. But what I did notice that there was definitely a difference in what I would call the stock quality plant health aspect that I wouldn't have had any problems leaving that out there for a little bit. Some of the stuff that only had either a VT or right before tassel, a little bit concerned with standability when it comes to that.
Yep, and who knows, it could start raining now, and that double fungicide application, it could start raining now and not quit, and that double fungicide application is going to allow you time to go back out in that field and harvest that corn when it's ready. So,
the bad part and the good part about tar spot is that when we have these instances like we're having right now, it's all because it was a really conducive environment for growing high yielding corn. So that's I guess the devil's advocate of nature is that I'm going to give you good growing conditions for corn, but it's also very conducive to having tar spot. So as we evaluate this is something else I guess to take in the back of your mind that we had locally 17 straight days of moisture, measurable moisture, 30 days, 31 days I think it was of basically a very heavy dew. Had all but 2 weeks probably calendar-wise where we had good respiration activity at night with nighttime temperatures dropping off. There's just a couple, like a week in August and a week in July. So all those contribute to really high yielding corn, and they also contribute to high instances of tar spot.
Yep.
Unfortunately, now you can't have your cake and eat it too.
You just got to figure out how to do both.
Yep. Just money, right?
It's just going to cost a little bit.
Yep.
So because Joe is not around this week, I hear you got a doozy for us this week for our corny joke.
Yep. To stay on brand, I try to find the most terrible joke I can find to make sure that I don't want to outdo Joe on that. I don't want him to feel like there's competition for good jokes here. So in keeping up with talking about harvest, there was a joke I found about harvest, and so after a successful harvest, the farmer decides to treat his wife to a barrel full of wine. He brings it home and he places it outside their house to celebrate his and his wife's success. Farmer wakes up the next day to find the barrel was only half full, despite the fact that they'd only had a few glasses each. Outraged by the thievery, he posts a sign that reads, "Farmer Joe owns this wine. Thieves will be shot." He and his wife continue their celebration that evening, satisfied. The next morning, however, the barrel is only a quarter full. And the farmer is furious. "Honey, you're doing everything wrong," his wife says. She creates a new sign that reads, "Pea barrel, do not drink." The farmer laughs at her cunning idea that no one in their right mind would steal from their barrel. The farmer returns the next morning to check the contents, hoping it hasn't been lost. And he only discovers that the barrel is now full.
Well, there we go.
Got to stay on brand.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody tuning in this week, and we will catch you all next week. Later.